Oh, we welcome Devarshi tonight. It's just a delight to have him with us. He's a longtime minister and Raja Yoga teacher for many, many years, Kriya ministry, and he's now head of the Ananda Global Kriya Sangha and in charge of the monks monastic order and head of the Khandala monastery in India. He's lived in, I was counting them up, I think 5 perhaps different Ananda communities. So he's well versed in the different ways that communities do things, and we're just thrilled to have him with us tonight. And he'll start off with prayer and chanting and a moment of meditation, and then we'll be into the class. So it's all yours, Devarshi.
Okay, thank you, Ramurti. It's wonderful to be here with everyone. It's 7:30 a.m. here in India, and we're in Khandala, which is about halfway in between Mumbai and Pune. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing here, and just to give you an idea of that. And like you all, or many of you, we are also looking for land for building a more permanent monastery, and also to have opportunity to grow food and be a little bit more self-sufficient, just to be ready for anything. So I'll talk a little bit about that also. So let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda ji, beloved Swamiji, we bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, we are your children. Guide our lives, guide our thoughts, guide our feeling, all of our actions and words, that we may be in tune with thy will. May we act as your instruments, bringing thy light and thy grace to all whom we meet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We'll do a couple of chants. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Satrisham Tattvamasyadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvade Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna-rahitam Satgurum Tvam Namami. Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva Bandhu Chasakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. This is a chant that Sri Yukteswarji used to play, and Master chanted, "Desire, my great enemy," about gaining control of the life force, our emotions, our feelings, and being the tool that helps us overcome dire fears and colossal sufferings. Desire, my great enemy, with his soldiers surrounding me, is giving me lots of trouble. Oh, my Lord, is giving me lots of trouble. Oh, my Lord, that enemy I will deceive, remaining in the castle of peace, night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord, night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord, night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord, night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. What will be my fate? Oh Lord, tell me. Pranayam be thy religion. Pranayam will give thee salvation. Pranayam is the wishing tree. 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 Pranayam is beloved God. Pranayam is Creator Lord. Pranayam is the cosmic world. Pranayam is the cosmic world. Yam is the cosmic world. Pranayam is the cosmic world. Control the little pranayam, become all-pervading pranayam. You won't have to fear anything anymore. 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 Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. You won't have to fear anything anymore. You won't have to fear anything anymore. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Let's meditate for just a moment. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, joy to see so many people, like I said, who I haven't seen in a long time. And thank you for inviting me here. And this is a great topic and obviously very timely. And one of the descriptions in the Ananda LA page was, we were born for this moment, how we got here, where we're going, how to get there. And I just will share a little bit about what we've been doing here, partly to introduce, help people catch up to where I've been at. But for somehow we've been very fortunate to keep being ahead of the curve and what's happening. About 2 years ago, we moved our monastery from Pune city to Khandala, which is a very, almost quite rural kind of a place. We live in a gated community. We have 7 monks living in 2 houses that are just about a 5-minute walk apart in a very quiet, sort of a residential area. And we have really good internet access, which is one of the things that we were really looking for, because we really saw that we needed to get very strongly into the online classes and spreading online meditation, Kriya Yoga throughout India. And that's been our business for the last 2 years. And it's been thriving all along. We've had over 2,000 or more, 2,500 students, paid students, which has been really helped to support us. And we've been very proactive in looking ahead all along to what's going to be happening next. And somehow we had tuned into this. And so when the pandemic came, and all of a sudden I was telling Murti, on the weekend of March 11th, 12th, we had a Kriya retreat in Bangalore with over 100 people from all over India who were going to be flying down there. And that's just when it started coming up here. And it was one of these situations where we really had to tune in with intuition because there weren't a lot of cases in India at that time. And it just shows the power of being receptive to our gurus, to their grace and their guidance, but also being very proactive. Because some people were saying, oh, don't worry about it. No one's worrying about it, so we shouldn't either. But somehow I couldn't let go of this feeling that it just was a really bad idea to have a lot of elderly people, including, coming down there. And so we canceled it and we did an online retreat. And it was a huge success. We had, several hundred people, Kriyabans all over India, take part. And it just became so much bigger than what we were going to do. But it turns out that that very weekend was when the big breakout of this Muslim group in India was like the big super spreading event that launched coronavirus in India. And I was joking with Ramurti, we avoided getting a lot of really strong publicity for Ananda Sangha in India by not having that retreat, but it wouldn't have been good publicity. And so it just allowed us to really jump into this whole online world, again, proactively. And now we're having a big weekend program called the Change Transformation Awaits event, which is a whole other level of online, using a whole different platform. It's almost like Zoom is a Kali Yuga platform compared to what Shurjo and Narayani are working with, which is something called AirMeet, where you have tables and auditorium and you have breakout groups, and we hope to have a couple thousand people for this event. So far we have about 500 registrations, paid registrations, and many people are going to sign up towards the end. So this idea of really being proactive, I'll jump ahead to where we're going and how to get there, because we need to be proactive about this right now. There's a friend once said, if you don't know where you're going, you won't get there. And it takes a lot of thinking about this to understand that idea. It's sort of humorous in a way. But we really need to be clear about where we're wanting to go and how to get there. And it's a lot of intuition right now. And that's, I think, we're not going to be guided to the right thing just by reading the book and what did Swamiji say here. And yeah, we have to be guided by what he said. But how we do it has to be with intuition. And Swamiji gave the story of that person who understood that World War II was about to happen, and he went by the book and did all the research to find the safest place in the whole world where he could sit out this huge world war that was going to come. And he found, with all the maps and all the best reasoning only, which can be a great friend or a great enemy, but he found this remote island in the middle of the South Pacific that was the safest place in the world, and it was the island of Guam, where all the wars and battles happened out there. And so we have to be guided by intuition, not just by reason, and where we go and how we do it. But we also have to be very proactive about it and trust and move forward and trust that Divine Mother is guiding us. For us here, we realize that we do need to have land, and the monastery is the only sort of center in a way in India, because we have this very strong group that we're not tied to a particular place in a particular city. And all of our centers are right in the middle of these huge, tremendous Indian cities. And Swamiji said, gather some friends and find land in the country. So we're looking for land now, actively, but we're looking not just in our area, but with this idea of the best place in India that has good farmland, that can support others also if the need arises. So it's a huge step for us. It's one of these, Master said, bite off more than you can chew and chew it. And this is way more than we can chew right now. But we got big mouths, I guess, from chewing a lot of big things these last couple of years. And so we're really very actively looking for that as our next step. And I understand you all are too. And this is very, very important. And I think it's important to be very proactive during this time and just not reactive. And we can see what happens when we're only reactive. Yeah, we can be safe, but we don't know what's happening next. And I think we just have to be really open and receptive, guided by our gurus, by Divine Mother, by what Swamiji advised us, by our peers, our guru bhais, and work with each other, because that's another part of it, that we really need to find a way to be working with each other right now, with people of like mind. That's been a huge strength of our monastery here, is that we have 7 of us, and we've had really strong daily sadhana until we started having to isolate even here with each other. We've had really strong group sadhana, working together every day, pushing together, satsangs every day, meals in silence when we were all eating together, because that's what Swamiji wanted. But there's an attunement with like-minded people. An inner attunement is very important. And right now what you're doing with all these online satsangs is very important. But also just to be, again, very proactively looking ahead. And change does bring a lot of great opportunities. And that's what we have right now. It's just a really extraordinary opportunity. So how we got here, I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to talk in 2 ways about it, which is how we individually got here and how we as a planet got to this point in time. And I think we've all mulled this over and are aware of it, that individually we chose to come at this time. We really did. It was a very conscious choice. Many of us, when we first came to Ananda, I came to Ananda Village in 1977, and Swamiji was talking a lot at that time about the coming hard times and what Master predicted and the need to form colonies and communities. And I think all of us at that time understood that we came for this time and for this sort of heroic effort to serve the world and help the world through this transition. Heroic because it's not going to be an easy time. And for many of us over the years, it's kind of like, when's it going to happen? I mean, we came for this and it's not happening yet. And I think some people would hear Swamiji get up on the lecture platform and start talking about it. And, he'd been talking about it for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It hadn't happened yet. And people were kind of like, come on, Swamiji, it hasn't happened yet. It's probably not going to happen. Or at least there was that doubt in their minds. And I think he never stopped talking about it because he wanted us to never stop thinking about it. And so one of the great lessons, and then how we got here at this time as a planet, it's a big transition between Kali Yuga and Dropara Yuga. I know that we've all understood that Dropara Yuga began a couple hundred years ago, or even a few hundred years ago. And so we've been thinking, I think that, oh, we're now in Dropara Yuga and age of energy, and the worst of the transition maybe has happened. But Swamiji wrote about the final transition, which would cause worldwide war and economic, depression, and much of the planet getting wiped out. I mean, well, some of the things he said were pretty daunting. For example, he said that the possibility of atomic war is about 100%, which is just the way he said, oh, it's about 100%. And I think we can see that. I mean, living in India right now, China's incursions into India and everywhere, and it's just, you see that things are starting to move. And this transition is sort of the final battle between Kali Yuga and Dropara Yuga, even though we're well into Dropara Yuga. The way Swamiji put it, he said that Kali Yuga attitudes actually will persist way into Dropara Yuga. But right now, what he's saying is that the really strong Kali Yuga attitudes of form, of dictatorships, of abuse, of power, all these attitudes, rather than dying yet, they've actually been given more energy, because this age of energy, Dwapara Yuga, there's an increase in the level of energy. Everything's being sped up, and that increase of energy is actually empowering the Kali Yuga people and giving them more energy and more convincing that I'm right, and we're gonna kill everybody else who's not right, and we're gonna bring out our guns and start shooting people. And the one example Swamiji gave is that the abuse of the land. He said in Kali Yuga, you could only have small scale abuse of the land for, drilling oil and wasting the planet. But in Dwapara Yuga, with that added energy, it happens on a much larger scale, with a much larger level of greed and just acquisitiveness and destroying the planet. And so this is sort of as the final battle, in a way, of these Kali Yuga energies coming up and empowering the old Kali Yuga attitudes, and this final battle of Dwapara Yuga having to be ushered in. And I think this is what we're seeing on the streets of the United States right now, with everyone pulling out their guns and the old attitudes of racial injustice and intolerance and oppression getting stronger, amazingly, because you'd think that in an age of enlightenment, those things would just naturally start going away. But those acolytes, devotees of Kali Yuga and the Kali Yuga ways, they have more energy now because of Dwapara Yuga. And this is the cause of why Swamiji said, why Master said there would be worldwide war and economic disaster. And Master talked about it in this way, that economic depressions are caused by greed. And when there's a severe imbalance of wealth and poverty, and it gets worse and worse, that's the inevitable precursor to economic depression and then war. And that's what we're seeing now also. And we see it especially in India, because India is starting to have more billionaires than anywhere on the planet, but the poverty is not changing. It's just, there's still childhood hunger and starvation, and stunting and of growth from children who just don't have enough food or nutrition. And so the imbalance has gotten extreme, and this is it's all coming together right now. And that's how we've gotten here to this point. In my own feeling, Jyotishji said something that, he was one of these people who thought, well, Swamiji's talking about it, but it's going to come gradually, and we'll have time to prepare, and we'll see it start to happen. But then he said he realized with this pandemic and how suddenly it happened and how everything changed just instantly. He realized that, yeah, it's going to happen really, really quickly, and we really have to be proactively ready for it. And so rather than just reactive, because if we're just reactive, then we're just going to be defending our homes in the cities and from people wanting food, and we just have to be looking forward and planning ahead at this point. And I'm hoping that Divine Mother gave us this sudden pandemic and just total shutdown, partly to show us how quick this whole thing could happen. And I'm hoping that maybe she's going to give a pause to this process and give us some time to really start preparing for the next 6 months or a year or however much time it might be. I'm hoping and praying it is. I'm not counting on it. We do have to move quickly. But just if there is a pause in all of this, use it as an opportunity to say, okay, when the real final thing happens, it's going to happen very quickly, and we need to be proactive, and we need to be ahead of where it's going to happen. So this is where we're at right now. And it's, we're in the worst or the best, depending on how you look at it, of times, because it's the most intense part of this transition from Kali Yuga to Dropara Yuga. And I'm working on a book right now that's been stopping and starting over the last year about Kriya Yoga and the path of Kriya for the general public. But when I started it, it was pre-pandemic. And once the pandemic happened and hit and this whole world changed, I really changed the understanding and approach to that book, which is really about the inward religion for the New Age. And this is really, he wrote a whole book about religion for the New Age. And it's about the need for inward religion, inward understanding, rather than old forms. Because one of the transitions of Dropara Yuga is that religious forms and structures are already being dissolved. And you see this, people can't even go to church anymore. And it's just, people can't gather in outward ways, and they're being forced inwardly. I read just yesterday, there was a survey of people, and it said that 2/3 of people feel that this whole isolation and pandemic and having to go within, 2/3 of people thought it was really good for them to actually go through that. And so this is the opportunity of this time, that in a way it's forcing us one way or the other. And this is sort of a Saturn approach to life, which is that if you don't learn the lesson, Saturn comes and starts hitting you even harder to push you in that direction. I use the analogy of when I was in grade school, we had a teacher who was really tough. I mean, he just was really, really tough. And if a student wasn't behaving and wasn't, marching to the principal's office the way the teacher was ordering him to, we knew that this teacher would take your arm up behind your back and twist your arm up and push it up real hard and cause a lot of pain and force you to go. And so even before that point, the teacher would say, so we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And we knew that, I didn't want to do it the hard way. So the easy way is to proactively decide that in this case, I'm going to work on my inner life. I'm going to be proactive about serving and giving to others, because that's a big part of why we came. And it's also a big part of how we're going to get out of our own suffering, the dire fears and colossal sufferings. And so Master came at this time to bring inward religion. And it's so interesting that in Autobiography of a Yogi, we think of Kriya Yoga just simply as it's going to help me to find God. And it is. But there's 2 quotes in Autobiography about what Master and our line of gurus brought. And there's 2 quotes there that talk about Kriya Yoga and this path in a very different way. And one of them is when Babaji would tell the Hari Mahashai, tell all your Kriya disciples. And he would quote from the Bhagavad Gita, even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. And it's interesting that that's how he led with Kriya Yoga, Babaji, rather than Kriya Yoga will give you moksha and liberation. No, it will free you from dire fears and colossal sufferings, because it's not like for most of us, we're came to this earth to escape dire fears and colossal sufferings. But I think they knew that Kriya Yoga was being given for this age of just intensity, where there's just a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. The other thing is that Master said that Babaji, Christ, they're working out the salvation of this age. And a big part of their work, which I think includes the path of Kriya, is to inspire the nations to forsake suicidal wars, race hatreds, religious sectarianism, and the boomerang evils of materialism. And isn't that what we're seeing right now? It's the war, religious sectarianism, racial, hatred and injustice, materialism. That's the battle that's happening right now. And so it's interesting that they were kind of hinting that Kriya Yoga, this inner religion, was coming for right now. And it was first presented in 1863 in India. Babaji gave it to Lahiri Mahashai. But it was almost like it was needing all of that time just to start to filter out for Master to bring it into a modern context. Because again, Babaji also said that he understood the complexities and influences of Western civilization, and that Kriya Yoga was given for these complexities and influences, and again, for these very times that we're in. And so this is the time to really tune more deeply into this inward religion and inward life, which isn't to say escaping from the world and heading off into the caves, because that's the challenge that I think we also accepted, that we came into this life to give to the world and to help the world and to be instruments of light and grace to the world, rather than fleeing to the caves and the hills and the monasteries, the remote hermitage monasteries. So this is the whole path of Kriya Yoga in a way, and Master's teachings. Master said once that he came to bring Kriya Yoga and his interpretation of the scriptures, the Gita and the Christian Bible. And those scriptural teachings were more about how to live a life of Kriya Yoga in this world, rather than heading up into the caves. And so using these practices, using the principles, because when I talk about Kriya Yoga, for me, it's not just the technique of Kriya Yoga, it's all of our techniques, but it's not even just the techniques, it's this whole approach to life and this understanding of working with energy, working with control of the life force. And you even see the Kali Yuga influence, even in Kriya Yoga, because Swamiji said this. He said in Kali Yuga, pranayama was considered to be just a breathing exercise and a physical thing. This is Kali Yuga, everything's physical, material, what I can do and feel. He said in Dropara Yuga, people understand that pranayama is a condition. It's not a technique. It's a condition of having control over the life force. And so you see people who learn Kriya Yoga and make it just a very physical thing. It's just only about awe and E and perfecting that in every possible way, just in a very physical way. And that part of it is actually really simple. It's important, but it's very simple. And this is what I've seen, that those who gain the most from Kriya understand the inwardness of it. And this is why Swamiji, at pretty much almost every Kriya initiation, or many of them, would talk about how Kriya is an art and a science. And that those who get the most from Kriya Yoga understand that. And that he said the great artists in any school of art, they don't identify as with their techniques. And so Van Gogh wouldn't say, I'm an impressionist artist. He was an artist, and he found expression through, yes, that school and those, approach that he used, but he didn't identify with the techniques. He was an artist and expressing grace and beauty and, other ideas through his art. And for a Kriya yogi, we're not technical yogis. We have techniques, and these are incredible tools, so I'll talk about that. But with this inner understanding of using them as an expression of inspiration, a vehicle for inspiration, devotion, for this inward religion rather than just a physical exercise and breathing practice. This is really how we gain the most from this time also. And I'll just give a couple of examples. One is that, and just how to use these tools on the path of Kriya, which is coming back to dire fears and colossal sufferings, that fear and suffering is not of the mind. We think it is. Anxiety, we think it's of the mind. And this is a time of anxiety. This is like, anxiety is like the number one in charge of this world right now. I mean, I think everyone here, and including myself, there's just a lot of intense anxiety during this time on so many levels about our future, about, COVID. Am I doing the right thing? Am I being too cautious? Am I being too paranoid? Staying up at night worrying about these things. I mean, how many people here have had a sleepless night just with this anxiety? I'll raise my hand. I'm one of them. It's just, but then we were given these tools to help us with that. But it's also the understanding is really important, that fear and suffering that was being quoted by Babaji is of the heart. It's of the feeling. It's of the feeling nature of the heart. All suffering, all grief, sorrow, loss, anger, fear, all of these things are of the heart. They find expression through the mind as anxiety or anxious thoughts or fears of the mind, but it all comes from the heart. And so this time especially, I think we all need to work on what Patanjali said as the definition of yoga, neutralizing the waves of feeling of the heart, and be more conscious of that as part of our practice. One thing that I'm finding really helpful at times is to practice more Hong Sa, because Hong Sa is really designed physically to calm the heart, to calm the heartbeat. But also to calm the breathing and to calm the waves of feeling of the heart. Kriya is also important because it really magnetizes the astral spine. And I'll talk about how it does that as a tool of pranayama. But practice more Hong Sa at times. At times when because sometimes we start to practice Kriya and there's still that anxiety and, restlessness and, what's going to happen and, my finances or my health or all these things. And Swamiji said one time, don't practice Kriya when you're overly emotional. And I think there are times these days that if we didn't practice Kriya when we were overly anxious, we probably would never practice Kriya. So at some point you have to just get started into it. But do more Hong Sa at times. And this is what I'm finding helpful. Yeah, still do Kriya. And I'll talk about how Kriya really is powerful for helping us in this way. But there are times when I'll just do 30 or 45 minutes of Hong Sa and do less Kriya and experiment with this. Master said one time that if you want to be a master in this lifetime, do 2 hours of Hong Sa every day. And that was such an interesting statement. He didn't say do 2 hours of Kriya every day. He said do 2 hours of Hong Sa every day. And someone asked Swamiji one time, so can I do it can I break it up into different portions of the day, or do I have to do 2 hours all at once, or can I break it up? And Swamiji said, well, you could break it up. But the way he said it, you could tell he wasn't saying you should, or that's what Master was talking about. So I was curious one time, why did Master say 2 hours of Hong Sa? And I'm assuming he meant 2 hours at a time, honestly. So I've done a number of times a 2-hour practice just of Hong Sa. And I would really, really recommend this to all of you. Maybe you could do a guided meditation where you do 2 hours of Hong Sa, period. That's what you do. Maybe then you do some Kriya afterwards. But it's sort of a proof of concept of the power of Hong Sa to do 2 hours of Hong Sa. It's really, really powerful. I can't recommend it highly enough to give you a deeper experience and understanding of the power of Hong Sa to calm anxiety, to calm the waves of feeling of the heart, the emotions, the fears, the dire fears in these things. And what I found is that when I've done these longer practices of Hong Sa, that then the next time I practice Hong Sa as part of your, can you still hear me? Okay, something switched on my monitor that pretended that it was different. So when we practice those 2 hours of Hong Sa, I have found that the next time I sit for my normal, quote, normal meditation practice, that suddenly Hong Sa is a lot more powerful. And it's almost like by having a really powerful practice of anything, including chanting. For example, Master said that if you really have a deep experience of a chant, a particular chant, he said you've spiritualized that chant for you. And I think we've all experienced this, where there are certain chants that we've had a deep experience with. And then every time we do that chant, it has that power to really, really help us a lot more. It has spiritual power. And we can do that even with Hong Sa, because again, we see Hong Sa as a technique, Hong Sa, and it's sort of a technical thing, and you can start to get mechanical with it. But if you really go deep into that practice and have a deeper experience of it, then whenever you practice it again as part of your regular meditation, it has a lot more power to really help you just to really start from a really deep, calm presence. So this is the power of the techniques, to use them not just as mechanical things. Okay, I do my Hong Sa, I do my Kriya, now I do Om, and you sort of have this rigid outline that you do, but really try to have more of this intuitive understanding of it. And yes, at times we have a mechanical practice, let's face it. I don't think anyone can avoid it. But the more that we are working at really having this inner practice, the better. And yeah, the power of habit can be very good, because we have the habit of just the discipline and the focus. But habit can also get us into this routine of doing it mechanically. And so we have to find the balance of discipline, habit, but also really finding ways to re-enliven and reawaken this inner life. So another thing that Master said about this time that we're in, he said that, he said, you are on the, he told Swamiji this, you are on the eve, or Swamiji heard it at a talk, you are on the eve of a great spiritual awakening, a great change in the churches, where true souls will be drawn to seek the actual experience of God's presence. And this is what Master brought, is to teach us to seek the actual experience of God's presence. And this is very, very important to understand, that Kriya Yoga and these practices were given to us to give us that direct experience. And this is part of the whole battle of this age. You see that religious warfare, I think we're going to see more of it with, fundamentalist groups in the US. We see fundamentalist terrorists in the Middle East. I think we're seeing some fundamentalists over here in India of all the religions. And it's battling this draw of individuals to have their own direct experience of God without having to go through the church and the priest and depend on the priest for that. And so you're seeing people are leaving the religions, and people are seeking spirituality. This is interesting that, a study that's very commonly quoted, that more and more people are leaving churches, but not becoming atheists, but they're becoming more spiritual in a way. And this survey found that a majority of Americans consider themselves spiritual, but not religious in a sense, because they are not going to church and they're having a sincere and even deeper inward seeking. And of course, we still have, Ananda Church. And, Master talked about this, that the church organizations, spiritual organizations of Dropara Yuga, it's still important, but it's just a very different approach of serving the individual and supporting the individual in finding God and having a deep experience of God's presence. There's a comedian I heard many years ago, and he joked, he said that studies are showing that thousands and thousands of people are leaving the churches and going back to God, is the way he put it. And it's just, I think people are realizing that the churches, many, not all, because I'm not disrespecting all churches, are not giving people the experience of God. And so this is, again, what Master came to bring us, which is inward religion. But again, I'll just touch one last time about not to get caught up in techniques, because meditation is not just a set of techniques. It is science and art. And I often quote from Autobiography of a Yogi, when Master was a boy, a young Mukunda, he would visit the levitating saint, Bhaduri Mahashaya, and he would sit and meditate with him for long periods of time. And Bhaduri Mahashaya, I mean, Master was an avatar, so I think all these stories were told us to help us, not to help him. But Bhaduri Mahashaya said to him one time, he said, you go often into the silence, but have you developed anubhava, actual perception of God? And Master said, he was reminding me to love God more than meditation. Do not mistake the technique for the goal. Do not mistake the technique for the goal. And so Kriya Yoga, don't mistake the technique for the goal. Understand that it's a tool to help us know God. But the other side of this is that I have found that when I practice the techniques even, especially Kriya, with a deep sense of devotional offering, or with a sense of really feeling divine joy, divine bliss going up and down my spine, rather than just willpower and energy, but the divine power of God as overwhelming divine bliss, and trying to tune into it and work with the energy in that way, I find that even Kriya itself is a form of worship and inner communion. And just work with the techniques in this way to spiritualize them. And this is, again, coming back to even the Kriya technique is both a science and an art. And Swamiji really emphasized that the Kriya technique is not practiced in the lungs, it's not practiced in the throat, it's practiced in the Sushumna, which is the altar of spirit, and it is divine worship. It's a form of puja, of offering ourselves into the light. It's a form of arati in a way. It's a form of going up to the altar of any religion and offering ourselves in prayer, except deeply inwardly. And an analogy that I have found helpful about one of the ways that Kriya really works as an inward religion is that when outward ceremonies, like in India, you often have a puja or offerings that you offer to the deity or to the altar, and the offerings themselves become spiritual and become spiritualized. Even the most unhealthy Indian sweet, if you put it on the altar during the ceremony, it becomes prasad rather than something that's going to kill you or give you diabetes or something like that. It becomes holy and sanctified and becomes prasad. And this is what Kriya Yoga, when done as an art and as an inner devotional worship of God, does. Because when we offer ourselves, and my understanding that one of the reasons, and maybe the most important reason, that Swamiji said that a technique, even though Kriya is a technique, every Kriya should be done as an act of devotional offering. And when we offer ourselves with devotion on the altar of spirit to God, the thing that we're offering becomes holy and spiritualized. And what we're offering is us, ourselves. And I believe this is how Kriya especially makes people more saintly. Because whenever we offer ourselves into the light with deep devotion, holding nothing back, giving ourselves to God, asking nothing for ourselves, but just purely as an act of giving, then our own natures become spiritualized and more sanctified. And this is where Master talked about, touch me but once, and I will change all my clay into thy gold. And Swamiji talks about this process of offering ourselves, helps us to cooperate and lift ourselves up into divine grace. And so this is the inner practice that's really, really important. This is why Kriya Yoga is a Dropara Yuga inward religion, but it's not based on huffing and puffing. This is what Swamiji talked about when you're just making sounds. He just said it's just huffing and puffing. It's a mechanical breathing exercise. And again, we do still do these things, but you can see this. Master said that when you do Kriya, he said very soon the sounds should become gentle because you're starting to get more inward and you're not just making huffing and puffing sounds. So I'm just going to talk now a little bit more about how Dropara Yuga religious and spiritual practices, how it's going to change, especially on the level of religion and spirituality, because the more that we can understand about this, the more we can gain from the opportunity that's being given to us. And this is where it's either going to be an opportunity or it's a curse in a way, depending on how we react and how people react. If you think of a wave in the ocean, for a surfer to catch that wave, and since many of you are in California, I'll use that particular analogy. The surfer has to swim and get up to a certain speed before it can catch the wave. The surfer doesn't have to be as fast as the wave, but close enough that it can catch the wave. And if it catches that wave and skillfully rides it, the surfer has a very thrilling, enjoyable ride back to the shore. But if you don't get up to speed, that wave can totally wipe you out and crash you over and just totally knock you over. And that's part of the power of this time and the opportunity of this time, is that there's a wave of energy sweeping over the world, and we really feel it. I think all of us feel it, and that's partly why the anxiety and the stress is because we're not used to this much energy. And there is more energy, let's face it. Dropara Yuga, there's going to be more energy coming. And so that energy is like a big wave. And if you really tune into it and put out more energy, like the surfer having to swim really hard to get up to speed, we can make a lot of spiritual progress during this time. And we can have a lot of growth. And this is why techniques like energization exercises are really, really important, because it really gets us up to speed. In some ways, doing the energization exercises before we meditate, that's kind of like the surfer getting up to speed and swimming really hard, because it brings our level of energy up enough that we can start to tune into the divine energy more easily. And so we do have to work with energy, having more energy, but also just calming the waves of feeling of the heart, because I think we've all seen that when we're emotionally upset or anxious and a heavy, strong energy comes at us, it upsets us even more. And so we have to work with all of these things: calmness, more energy control, pranayama, because this essentially is really more than anything how Kriya works, is by giving us pranayama. Pranayama be thy religion. Pranayama will give thee salvation. And the reason is that when we have control over the inner energy, then nothing can shake us. You won't have anything to fear anymore. And I find that energization exercises, Hong Sa practice, Kriya practice, these three together really, really combined, and it's really a combination practice, really are important during this time for all the reasons that I've been talking about. And before I get into the religion of this new age in some ways, actually I just want to talk about Kriya and Pranayama, because Pranayama, one of the main things that it does, it gives us control over the life force, the inner life force. It gives us control over the reactive process. So we're not emotionally reacting to everything that happens. We become a cause rather than an effect. And what is the opposite of reactive? It's proactive. And this is why I'm talking about, this is a time where we need to be proactive and to be a cause rather than an effect. Because if we just try to protect ourselves, which is a tendency at times, and sometimes we do need to do that, but if we only try to protect ourselves during these times, what happens when you try to protect your heart, you sort of go like this and you get small, your aura gets small and your heart closes and you have less magnetism and energy. And so in addition to developing more energy, we have to be giving more to others, trying to be a positive cause to help others. And Swamiji has talked about this at times, where one of the best ways to kind of not defend ourselves from the anxiety or angers of other people, but to be stronger and to have a stronger magnetic aura is to give to people and to be a cause rather than an effect. And when we do that, our aura gets bigger, we get stronger, and again, using all these tools to help us to be able to do that. And that's what the techniques are mostly about. But there's another aspect to Kriya, especially during this time, that's really powerful, and which is that the reason this world seems so disruptive and seems to cause us so much anxiety is because the world out there is more magnetic than the world in here for us individually at that moment. And when something is a stronger magnet, it pulls us in that direction. And so the world is very magnetic right now and very energetic, and it has a tendency to pull us into its reality and other people's realities and other people's fears, anxieties, what's going to happen. And so one of the ways that Kriya really works is that by bringing a really strong, powerful, magnetic divine energy of divine bliss and divine power up and down our astral spines, it starts to create a very, very powerful magnet in our sushumna. And when that magnetism within ourselves in the sushumna becomes really, really strong, it becomes stronger than the magnetism out there. And then we're no longer influenced by what's happening out there and by all the fears and colossal sufferings. And so this is a time to do Kriya really powerfully, and just with a sense that there's this divine power and magnetism and energy going up and down our astral spines. And maybe not everyone here is a Kriya yogi. I think most of you are. But if you aren't, learn Kriya and learn practices like this. Because especially now, using not just willpower, but feel divine power, the Guru's power especially. Because in the end, in some ways, if you ask people, those of us here, and me, I know I can say this for myself, if someone asks me, what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? I don't say, I'm a Kriya yogi. I say, I'm a disciple of Paramhansa Yogananda, and I practice Kriya yoga. But that discipleship and attunement to the Guru is really the greatest power and the protection. So when we practice Kriya, feel the Guru's power. Swamiji said, any time you practice Kriya, always do it with the Guru. But feel divine power going up and down our sushumna, not just our own willpower. And that power of the divine and the grace of God and the Guru going up and down our spine, that's what creates a really, really powerful magnet and gives us a really, really strong center so that we can stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds because our center is so magnetically strong. And that's right now, especially as you do Kriya, do it with more of the awareness that we have to do it with a lot more magnetism, divine power. Feel the power of the universe going up and down our spines. So some of the things to look for with religion and spirituality in this clash of ages, of Kali versus Dropara Yuga, it's like you can almost make a movie about it, just the drama of this. And so I just want to talk about these mostly as a way of just how we can tune in to get more from it individually, but also how we can serve others and give to others. So one I've already talked about, which is that religion is going to be more about inward practices. And we just have to keep sharing these teachings more and more. And that's kind of a big part of our work here, of sharing these teachings as a tool for these times, especially because, temples and churches during this era, I mean, it's just, to me, I find it fascinating that a lot of these worst super spreading events of coronavirus have been at churches and religious gatherings. And just people are, some of these people are saying, oh, God will protect us, we're here to worship, and they're all getting wiped out during this time. And it's just, I think it's just Divine Mother saying, no, you're looking in the wrong place. You need to be going within rather than just kind of hanging out and doing outward rituals. That said, we also need satsang, and so that's important. So I'm not speaking against satsang, but inner practices rather than outer rituals are really a big hallmark of this age. Another one is just Dropara Yuga is an age of energy. So we have to be really always conscious of this and be aware of our own energies, how we can change our level of energy when we're getting disrupted by the world. How do we increase our energy and magnetism so we're not being bowled over and knocked over by everything going on out there? And again, this is pranayama, as really pranayama be thy religion. Another one is that Swamiji has talked about is that there's more individual and personal responsibility during this time. And that includes in the world of religion and spirituality. A priest is not going to come and do it for us. And this is something so universal. I mean, in India, you pay a pujari, a priest, you pay him enough money and he does all the mantras for you and you get all the blessings and you don't have to do anything except pay him some money, and he does all these mantras and he's saying them, but you're getting the blessing from all those mantras that he's saying. And maybe you get a little bit of something, but it just, we all know that when we do a mantra and do it with power, we get so much more than when someone's just, we're hiring someone to do 1,000,000 mantras. People do this, believe it or not. They'll pay a bunch of money, have a priest say 1,000,000 mantras over the course of days and weeks, and we get all the benefits from it. And this is not how it's going to work so much going forward. We have to take personal and individual responsibility for our spiritual life, our sadhana, our relationship with God, and it's not going to be done for us. Another thing that's really important coming up is just the evolution of religion and religious organizations, which is just, Master called his work a church of all religions. And it's based more on the teachings than the religions. Even his interpretations of the Bible and the Gita were interpretations of the teachings and not of the outward religion and the rituals. And this is why Master said Jesus Christ was crucified once, but his teachings have been crucified daily since then by millions of people who profess to be Christians. But you could say the same about any religion, Islam, Hinduism, and I think you could probably say the same thing about self-realization and Yogananda disciples. And so we just have to be very aware of this inner understanding of these things. Part of what Master brought also is communities. And I think it's really important as disciples of Master to really consciously tune into that. He said, get some friends and buy land in the country. And I think we all need to seriously think about that in some way and be following his call and what Swamiji said all these years to all of us. One other thing that Swamiji talked about that is coming into this age, he said that one of the reasons why the world is being hammered so strongly by Divine Mother, by God, as a preparation for Dropara Yuga, he said that in order to really receive the benefits of this new age of energy, the heart has to be much more receptive. And he said that a lot of the hammering of the karma of the world right now is to hammer out the hardness of the hearts and to make people's hearts softer and more receptive. And so this is an age of more inner receptivity to grace and to energy rather than just outward rituals. And one of the, I think, things that we're already seeing in Dropara Yuga is that this whole just male patriarchal based religions are dying more. The ones that are just focused on that are the ones that are struggling the most. And just having female priests, for example, or teachers in religions like, Swamiji has always had, Master had, I guess, with our practice, is that this is an imbalance of Kali Yuga, is that it was just more, even God is always a male God in Kali Yuga. And Swamiji, he was speaking in America in particular. He was speaking before a large audience in Portland, and he said that Americans especially need to tune more into the Divine Mother aspect of God, because and you see this in the battle out there, that those who are the most defensive of the old Kali Yuga ways are trying to put these heavy duty macho presidents in place who are, kind of brash and arrogant and much more of a traditional male energy. And so worshiping God as Divine Mother or practicing more with devotion is something that is really, the more we do that, the more we're in tune with the transition of the age, the more receptivity we develop, and the more that we'll gain from all of this. One of the other things is that religious organizations will put the individual's needs first. And you see this with churchianity, that it's more about the organization. And you see this with reading about the Catholic Church, that when a saint comes up, they lock him away because, here's an individual who's developed an individual relationship with God and has demonstrated it, and all of a sudden he's a threat to the church. Rather than as a benefit to the church, he's a threat, because this saint is saying that, yes, you too can develop this deep, inspired relationship with God that will make you saintly. And so Dwapara Yuga religious organizations are going to have to go in the opposite directions. And I think we will see many saints coming up. I think I personally can say that I see that with Ananda. I just see so many, not just saintly people at Ananda, but people who I sincerely believe are saints, even from past lifetimes. And so that's what we all need to be aware of when we're serving and giving to people, is that we're essentially trying to help people become saints, even if we're not a saint yet ourselves. That in a way is really the role and the duty of this coming age. And finally, one of the last things is just that there's just going to be a more unitive understanding of God in all of creation. Swamiji has talked about this. He uses that word unitive a lot. And recently, Narayani, who lives here in India, in Mumbai, she was Swamiji's personal assistant for many years towards the end of his life. And she was being interviewed, I think, by Asha, just to talk about what are the hallmarks of Swamiji that you would just define in a few sentences. And the one word she used was unitive. He just had this unitive understanding of, in many levels, that God is in all creatures, God is in all of creation, all animals in the planet, in all religions, in all of us. And this divinity, seeing God everywhere, is really a big part of what we're coming into. Because Kali Yuga God was nowhere. It was like, everything is material. And if I want to find God, I have to run away from the world, because God is not in the world, and I have to hide in a cave. But you're not going to find God in a cave if you're not going to see God in yourself and in others. And so what we're being asked to do is not to run away, because who are we running away from? Well, we would be running away from God. If God is in our friends, God is in the planet, God is in the suffering, God is in everything. And so this is just this more unitive view of life, and a unitive approach to life comes from seeing God in everything. And I think we're going to see during this time that the planet is respected more. God will be seen in all animals, all of creation, all creatures, every tree. So I think we're going to see, coming into this age, a lot of grace in that way, but there's still a big battle coming, and we're in the middle of it right now. One thing I just finally want to say is that one of the great blessings it's something that we can sort of hang our hat on when we get concerned about the direction of the world, is that this is an ascending age. This is an ascending age of Dropara Yuga. We've come out of Kali Yuga. And no matter how bad it seems or how bad it looks, Dwapara Yuga is going to have the last word and the final word. And it's going to inevitably go in these directions that we're talking about. Not without a lot of suffering and a lot of challenges, but you can trust that it's inevitable because this is the time we're in. We are fortunate in this sense that we're in an ascending age where it is going to improve after a certain amount of struggle, and that it's inevitable that this higher consciousness comes into the planet and that people change. So I think in a minute I'll just open it up to questions that people might have. And maybe I'll just talk about one aspect of Kriya that I've been talking about in my book that I'm working on, is this idea of transmuting anxiety, fear, desire, grief, sorrow, and turning that into a divine feeling. Because there's a sense that when we are suffering, we want to avoid, and there's a tendency to run away from these negative emotions and feelings because they're so unpleasant and so difficult to deal with. And especially, I think, in Western society, we've been taught to repress emotions and be strong and be tough and, be a certain way. But Kriya Yoga, one of the things it teaches us is not to repress feeling because it will only come out negatively in some other way. But Kriya is a tool that can help us to take fear, sorrow, grief, and offer it to God. And really, Swamiji said God is feeling. God is the feeling of divine bliss and divine joy. Those are the two higher, really, aspects of God. Sri Yukteswar said God is ever new joy, or ever new joy is God, which is a feeling. And that's what Swamiji was talking about. And so we can't repress feeling. We have to really transmute it and lift it up. And this is what I've seen, that with Kriya and what we practice, when we are going through emotions, negative emotions of any type, fear or suffering or loss or grief, that rather than trying to push it away or repress it or deny it or say, I'm a yogi, I'm beyond being touched by these things, I'm strong in myself, which is a form of repression, or it can be, but instead offer this feeling energy, agitated feeling energy, to God, as just offering it in meditation, devotion, giving Divine Mother even the worst of our funky feelings and angers and emotions, and just going right to her and right to the Guru and saying, I offer myself to you with deepest devotional offering. And when we do that, what I have seen is that human feeling becomes transmuted and uplifted into something that is truly divine feeling, that is divine love and divine joy. But the way to do that is not to deny it or avoid it or try to push it to the side, but really to very consciously look at it and accept it, not as who and what we are, but that it's something that we have to deal with it, and give it to God in deep meditation and offer it up and say, I'm yours, Lord. This is yours too, and I give this to you. And you'll find that by redirecting that feeling energy from the heart to the spiritual eye with devotion, because I think devotion is the vehicle that helps to carry all the negative feelings and sort of more lower human emotions, and is really what transmutes those into the divine feelings. So that's just one last thing that I just wanted to touch on, and let's see if we have questions.
It's something came to me from the Bible when you were talking about, and I saw this on Facebook a while ago too. These people, they were all gathering in the church saying God will protect us from the coronavirus and we'll all be safe because we have our faith is so strong. And I was reminded of when, Jesus was tempted by Satan in the desert. The second temptation was he took him to the high wall and said, throw yourself off the wall because it's written that God will send the angels to lift you up. And Jesus said, but it is also written, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And it was kind of like you mentioned, it's like, yes, God will protect you, but he might decide that you need to learn something from what you're doing
Yeah.
and not protect
Yeah.
you. He thinks that,
Yeah.
you know, to show
Yeah,
you.
we can't be presumptuous or arrogant about that.
Yes, definitely.
You know, Swamiji said God would protect all of us during these times, but the part that the fine print in that people don't usually quote is that Swamiji said he's not going to protect you from dying. He said if you have to die, he'll protect you and give you joy and freedom when you leave the body. But that part we have to leave in God's hands. We don't know how long we're going to live, but we just need to live courageously, giving and putting ourselves out there and serving, and put that in God's hands. So,
Like we're in this body, we're still bound by the dictates of our karma, and
yeah,
we change or lessen it through our practice, but it's still going to be there. And if our karma is to die at a certain time, I mean, that might be it.
yeah, yeah. So let's live fully while we're alive and serve and give, and then God will take care of the rest.
Hi, Devashi. This is Bimal.
Hi, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too.
I have very fond memories of you guys there.
Yeah, I have the same memories too. So Priya and I, the call went out. Jyotish and Devi asked the Sevakas to uh, to help mentor the because the work in India has been so successful,
Yes.
so many people that Priya and I have signed up as to be one of the mentors, and so
Yep.
we just signed up, and we're attempting to negotiate how do we then plug in to the program, and we've been able to get online and to start exploring and looking at how we can, as mentors, how we can serve those people who are beginning their meditation practices. What would you suggest that we do in terms of, because we're at the beginning stage of this, how should we navigate this process?
Okay. Jamal here is in charge of kind of working with helping mentors, and he has a team of people doing that.
Okay.
It's a very particular approach that you come into this system that's really well set up,
Right.
where, just so others can know about this, we have this Kriya Yoga home study course where we do all the basic what you do in all the centers. You know, you have level 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and learn to meditate, energization, Hong Sa, all the way up to Kriya, which you've been doing online since all this. But each of the 4 steps, there'll be like 20 to 30 students, and they'll have a mentor. And the mentor will, you know, guide them, answer their questions. Very often the mentor will set up a WhatsApp group where the people ask questions. The mentor will lead guided meditations, do some occasional classes, but also answer a lot of questions. There are a lot of videos and written materials, so they're prepared well that way. And so I would think that I'll talk to Jamal. I don't know what the current process is, because I think we're going to be getting a lot more students this weekend after this whole big change event. But Jamal is the one to be in touch with. And that would be jamal@anandaindia.org. And have you been in touch with Jamal about this yet?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. Now he's overwhelmingly busy at times. So, and I would just, I'll talk to him about this, because I know you personally, and I'll highly recommend you as being really, really good for this. And there is a need for that here. And you know, this is the beauty of what Jamal has created here, is that it's online classes, but there's also a very individual connection that people have. And that combination is really powerful. But it's hard to scale it up in a huge way. without having a lot of mentors like yourselves being ready and willing to help.
Thank you.
But we've prepared a lot of people for Kriya, and I have seen from their Kriya applications that many of these are actually amazingly well prepared for Kriya initiation. And so we're starting to get people finally coming through the pipeline to receiving Kriya. So we've had about 100 Kriya initiates through the online classes and home study course. And we do a lot of satsangs with them. And so it's been really, really effective, surprisingly effective, honestly. And now we also have a Hindi language version of it.
Yeah. Right.
That it's all a phone app, because most Hindi language speaking people, many don't even have laptops. They just do everything with the phone. So it's just an app that gives all the teachings, all the videos, all the written material. And then of course the mentor kind of works with them and relates to them.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Devarshi?
Hi, Devarshi. Hi, I'm Claire from Australia. Sorry about my accent. I just wanted to say thank you for the 2-hour Hong Saw suggestion, because I'm going to give that a try. So I don't normally struggle with this anxiety that we feel this year, but it is there. I can feel it. So I'm going to give that a whirl and maybe do that a few times a week and see how I go.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. Just even just one time, just to see what the power of that is. I can't say enough about it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
that's
you.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Ananda LA can lead a 2-hour guided practice of Hong Sa. Any other questions? Narayan, do you have anything that you would like me to add?
No, Devarshi, just want to say, so grateful that you were able to share with us your morning and our evening. It's a great blessing for us. I do have one quick last question maybe you could comment on, because in America we're coming up to the election later this year, and there's just a lot of polarization and negativity out there. Would you offer any recommendations for how people take in the news, stay informed, but not get sucked down the negative news quagmire?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about this whole election thing. What's going on over there? Yeah, I mean, this is such a big deal. It's, I want to read something that Master said that is so reassuring. It's going to take me a moment to find it, but it's just, it's really incredible. It's in an article he wrote in the magazine from a talk. He says, the sudden and drastic action of any faction in America or in world politics should not cause the American people too great alarm, nor instigate in them undue fear for the safety of their country and their hard-won freedom. All events in the lives of nations as of individuals are governed by the inexorable law of cause and effect, called the law of karma or cosmic justice by the sages of ancient India. And so again, American people should not get caught up in too great alarm. Doesn't mean to be passive and such, but in this article he talks about America's good karma will protect her. He said America's good karma is much more than its bad karma. It's made some mistakes. And in some ways, I almost think that what's happening right now in America is only that a lot of things that have been suppressed and pushed down, like racial injustice, are finally coming up and having to be dealt with. And I think that this might be part of America's good karma, that this stuff finally is being forced to be dealt with. And there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering. I mean, I fear for America too, and I think there could easily be some sort of civil war there. And that's why you just need to be strong in yourselves, vote, do the right things, but trust in God. Without being passive, we have to act, and we have to put out a lot of positive energy. And just again, fear and anxiety, we're less effective in helping others when we're caught up in the fear and anxiety of this moment especially. And yeah, it's a challenge, reading the news and what this guy says every 10 minutes and posts on Twitter and all that stuff. It's just a stunning time to be in. It's surreal, honestly. It really is surreal. But this is part of the big clash that's happening, Kali and Dropara Yuga. And I find it helpful not to personalize it. This time when Master said Babaji and Christ are in charge of the salvation of this age, and when Master said that Babaji implanted and put in the mind of Hitler the thought to fight the war on two fronts, Russia and in Europe, and that caused him to lose the war, I trust that these guys know what they're doing. These guys meaning Babaji and Christ, not the guys in charge of our country. That these guys know what they're doing, and that I can't help but think that, and I'm not joking when I say this, so it sounds funny, but I think Babaji and Christ were sitting up there and saying, things are moving kind of slowly here, and I think we need to make things speed up with this whole Kali to Dropara transition, and who are we going to get to do this? And they looked around and says, that guy, Donald Trump, he's the one, we'll get him to push things over the edge and make things happen more quickly. So I think we do have to trust that they know what they're doing. They haven't forgotten about us. In fact, I think Babaji, Christ are actually watching us more carefully and more in charge than ever. That said, we have to go through some real challenges in order to grow, and they're not going to take that from us. They're not going to make it easy just so, okay, everything's fine now and everything's cool again, because they don't want us to go back to that, and they want us to really put out a lot of energy and make it through these times and really power through the other side of it rather than make it easier for us. And so it's going to be challenging, and I think it's going to get extreme. I honestly do, in the next 6 months. So far beyond anything any of us ever could have imagined. And I think we're sort of at the beginning of it. And it just again speaks to the need to be really prepared and ready, and to work on ourselves and to be a cause rather than an effect, especially in the ways that have been given to us to do. Yeah, we have to vote and do all those things. And if you're called to be an activist in those ways, yeah, more power to you. But for many of us, I think to work on bringing divine grace and divine light into this world in very powerful ways is so important, and sharing these teachings with others. When there's a story of Master walking around Mount Washington with a disciple, and they saw Rajarsi meditating, and Master said, let's go around and not disturb him. And he said, you have no idea what blessings come to this work when a person like that is meditating deeply. And none of us is a Rajarsi as far as being in samadhi, but I believe that every spiritual effort that we make to give, to serve, to love, to work on ourselves, to meditate, brings that, incrementally, the same light and that grace onto the planet, into our spiritual family and what we're doing. And so just, avoid getting caught up in the fear and anxiety. It doesn't mean avoid acting in a time where we do need people to stand up and act, but don't do it from emotion and anger. And if we find ourselves getting caught up in that, turn off your Facebook feed and just get out of that discussion, or just unfriend someone who just is constantly bringing that stuff up and agitating us. And we don't need that right now. We need to focus on the light, but also do what we need to do. So it's finding a balance of how to deal with it. And it takes some self-awareness. But I am just finding in my own personal life, one of the big lessons for me in the last few years, last 10 years or so, is just trust. Trust God, trust Divine Mother, trust the Guru. I have to put out a lot of energy and act and try to do the right thing. And at the same time, though, just trust that they're watching over us. They know what we're going through individually and as a planet. They know intimately and better than we do what's really going on. And we just have to trust that they're watching, but we have our part too, which is to bring the light into this world every way that we can. And I think we can do a lot more by doing that than anything else that's even possible at this time to help change the karma of the planet and to change the balance of light and dark. But yeah, it's going to get very interesting. I'll have my popcorn ready and get ready to start watching this insane movie that's about to happen in America in the next 6 months. So it's unfortunate, but it's part of what's happening. And they know, they're watching, they know what's going on. And again, I'll just come back to, I think it's not just that they know, but they caused it or created it and said, okay, yeah, let's get on with it. We need to really push the buttons and speed things up, and here's the guy for that job, and let's put him in power and let's see what happens. But they're also watching and giving their grace and their love and their support, especially to those who are receptive. And again, this is why we have to calm the agitated emotions so that we can be more receptive to receiving light and grace rather than opening ourselves up to just the negativity and constantly diving into that crazy world of Facebook and all these things. And yeah, I'm not saying turn off your computer, but just find the right way to do it and the right balance. It's all in God's hands. So be in the light and be very powerful forces for the good in this world, especially America right now really, really needs it.
Devarshi, thank you so much for being
Okay.
with us.